Good morning, students. Today we start, that is part 2 of your history syllabus, and the chapter that we would be doing today is Bhakti Sufi traditions, and the preceding chapter, that is Through the Eyes of Travelers, it is not part of the syllabus now anymore, so that is why we shall be omitting it. Now, coming to the point, that is Bhakti Sufi traditions, this happens to be an extremely important chapter, not in the sense that it has some great rulers and it has some great kings and it talks about great battles, nothing like that. But then this chapter is about the spiritual and the philosophical impact of different traditions, whether they came from Islam or whether they came from Hinduism or Buddhism, and the profound effect that it had on the society of India over the last many centuries and millennia. That is what we would be talking about. And today, guys, you have to understand one very important fact. India happens to be a very old civilization, rather one of the oldest on the planet. But then you also have to understand that there were other contemporary old civilizations too. Whether you talk about the Greek civilization or the Sumerian or the Mesopotamian or the Egyptian or the Chinese, the Mayans, the Incas, they all were ancient civilizations. But what makes Indian civilization very unique is that we do not have pharaohs anymore. We do not have the religion now that was practiced during the times when the pyramids were being built. We do not have the faith system of the times. The Greeks now do not pray to the gods Apollo and Zeus the way they used to thousands of years ago. Now they all pray to Jesus Christ, right? But in or similar thing with the Sumerian or the Mesopotamian civilization, who had a different kind of faith system, who had a different kind of cultural system, and all that changed once Islam swept everything. So Indian society happens to be unique, that we follow the same Sanatan practices and the same Sanatan dharma which we used to do ever since India was born, and we started knowing we started associating ourselves with a particular culture and a particular geography. It's not changed. So that's what makes Indian society so unique, and you carry all those traditions even now. Whether you talk about your marriage rituals, you talk about the death rituals, you talk about the birth rituals, the gods, everything is age old practices. And as I have said always, that the Varna system that you have today, where you have the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, all that is from Rig Veda. It is not that it has a recent origin, probably from the Mughal times or from the times of even Ashoka the Great. Definitely not. They date ever since we can be dated. Okay, so this is what we are talking about, that the profound effect that the culture and the religious beliefs that has had on the Indian civilization, which cannot be changed. No one has been able. People talk about changing and making a difference and bringing new ideas. They can keep talking. Okay, now we saw in chapter 4, definitely we did not that by the mid first millennial century, the landscape of the subcontinent was dotted with variety of religious structures. As we saw, the stupas, monasteries, temples, which we just finished, if these typified certain religious beliefs and practices, others have been reconstructed from textual traditions, including the Purans, many of which received their present shape around the same time, and yet others remain only faintly visible in textual and visual records. New textual sources available from this period include the compositions attributed to poet saints, most of whom expressed themselves orally in regional languages used by ordinary people. These compositions, which were often set to music, were compiled by disciples or devotees, generally after the death of the poet saints. What is more, these traditions were fluid. Generations of devotees tended to elaborate on the original message and occasionally modified or even abandoned some of the ideas that appeared problematic or irrelevant in different political, social, or cultural contexts. Using these sources thus poses a challenge to historians. So, students, what it is essentially trying to tell you is that, students, again, going back to our previous discussions, you have to understand that, we had, for hundreds and thousands of years, we had a tradition of imparting learning and education through, never through writing. It was always through chanting and through uh, discussions, and that's how it used to be, right? So, but how do you ensure that such long poems and everything could be remembered, right? It was definitely, given the form of songs, and it was given the form of ballads, and that is the reason why, say for example, you pick up a lot of poems which are have been devoted to Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu